Now, with the festive season in full swing, many of us find ourselves with only a limited time for spending over the holidays. We speak to founder of PS Debt Management and financial advisor registered with the National Credit Regulator, Paulvia Shiburi, about how we can stretch a budget, stay afloat and avoid debt during this festive season. Paulvia, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is a highly pressured time. I mean, Christmas gifts, black tax, so many debts piling up, debit orders, and just a time where spending is presumably the norm. But, of course, it all catches up come January. What do you think are some of the really important considerations people should have before they blow the money?
I completely agree with you that it's a festive time where it's all about spending money, enjoying ourselves, and, just taking, relaxing throughout, enjoying your work that you've done for the entire year. And but there are a lot of incident or measures that still needs to be taken into consideration, more especially because December comes once a year, just like any other month.
Yeah.
So you need to be prepared for it financially. You start to plan for it as early as January, to plan for your next December. A reason for that is because we see a lot of people that spend a lot of money around about the festive season, and come the following month, there is not much left for their living expenses and their essentials.
And when it comes to, you speak about a plan. What would such a plan look like?
We look at having a realistic budget. And as much as we've said this over and over again, it's really important to have a realistic budget. Realistic budget can be, classified into three things, where we can say 50% is your essentials, and then now that's 50% of the income, and now 30% we're looking at your wants and your debt obligations, and now the remaining 20% has to be for your savings. So now that looks at that 30%, this is where you actually need to put in that money for entertainment and stuff. So having a really realistic budget actually does help go a long way, because it helps you track where your money has gone to.
You speak about savings. It may sound like a swear word here in South Africa, especially just looking at the current state of the economy and the culture of saving, really almost non-existent to those who may be severely in need and will ask, how do you expect me to save? What tips do you have there?
I always say that before you can start to think about saving, you need to look at how much debt do I have? How much goes towards my debt? Because once you start eliminating the debt, then what you can do is that you free up a lot of income. That means that you will now be in a position to save. But as long as you are over indebted, you are not in a position to save. So you need to first deal with the debt, tackle the debt first, and then once that has done, you will free up a whole lot of income that you can invest into savings.
There's a lot of advertisements and a lot of talk around debt counseling. What exactly does debt counseling entail? Does it mean that should one perhaps want to apply for a bond and they're under debt review, that they may have the possibility of being rejected?
Of course, when you are under debt counseling, we must also remember that debt counseling is a formal and legal process. And what it does is it helps consumers relieve them of their current monthly commitments. It reduces the monthly repayments as well as the interest rate. And now, so it's very important that when you undergo debt counseling, you understand what the whole process entails. You mentioned that if you are to apply for a bond, as long as you're under debt counseling, you'll not be able to incur any new debt until the current debt has been dealt with. You need to make sure that you complete the debt counseling process, and the debt counselor will issue a clearance certificate. Then that makes it, you become credit worthy again. You're able to obtain credit in the future should you need to do that. But it's important that you exit the process the right way.
What does that look like? And is that something to note with a lot of emphasis, exiting the process in the correct manner?
That's correct, because if you do not exit the debt counseling process correctly, there are implications where your name will still be flagged as long as your debts, you still have debts. So you need to make sure that if you are to be under debt counseling for an X amount of years, you need to make sure that you complete the process. And once the process has been completed, a clearance certificate is then issued and you are able to take out credit again in the future.
When is one deemed financially healthy?
Once we look at, when we look at a person who's deemed financially healthy, we look at how much do you spend on your debt obligations. Out of your income, how much do you spend on your necessities, on your debt obligations, savings, and investments? So now, if you get to a point where your expenses, or rather your income, your expenses are more than your income, then that means that there's an indication that you have a problem and you're not in a good financial position. However, when you, after paying all your debt obligations and as well as your needs and wants, you still have money to save, then you are considered, in a better financial position.
And some tips to improve financial health. I mean, as we go into the new year, there's all sorts of resolutions. Lose some weight, pick up a new hobby. Financial health should be one of them.
That's correct. And I always say that if you can't afford it, don't take out credit for it. Plan better for your financial future. Right now, we have seen, especially with COVID, that anything can happen. And if there isn't any plan to back you up, you will eventually be in some sort of financial predicament that you can't, get out of. So it's very important that you don't take out unnecessary credit. Also, be on the lookout for any credit providers that call you to tell you that you qualify for an X amount of money, and then you then go for it. So it's really important to start taking out debt when it's necessary, and do not overburden yourself with a lot of debts at the same time.
That's a very good point you make. I mean, if one has to just look at a banking app, you'll see how it shouts out at you to say you are you qualify. You qualify for more credit or take out debt. This is on offer. That in itself doesn't essentially mean you can afford it, right?
That's true. It doesn't mean that you can afford it. Remember that now we also, one of the things we do as debt counselors is that we also investigate reckless lending. And that way, this is where we try to see what happened. Were you given the account or the amount there, the loan recklessly? Was there not enough assessment done prior to the granting of that loan? So it's really important that you just don't apply for things simply because you get a message or a call that you qualify for it. You may qualify for it based on your credit report, but when we start looking at now your income and expenses that you currently have, you find that most people do not actually qualify for it.
Thank you so much for that. Food for thought, a lot to consider. Financial advisor Paulvia Shiburi, who is registered with the National Credit Regulator, giving some advice on how to spend that money during this festive season period.